In this video, we're going to be talking about the use of value and contrast in our images that we create. So, what is value? Based off of dictionary.com, if you take a look in the section that talks about fine arts, it's a degree of lightness or darkness in a color, the relationship of light and shade in a painting or drawing or the like. So, what is contrast? If we take a look at the area for fine arts, again, it's the opposition or juxtaposition of different forms, line, or colors in a work of art to intensify each element's properties and produce a more dynamic expressiveness. Photography, the relative difference between light and dark areas of a print or a negative. And so this is an image that I put together, and this is not my artwork that I have here. Found some really cool concept art. But I built these different swatches. So if you've ever worked in a paint program, you know that we have a value range slider that you can pick from, and it goes from dark to light. So those tones could be either really solid, or this could be something if you're drawing with a pencil, depending on how hard you're pushing down on the paper, and maybe the graphite that you're using, you can get darker tones or lighter tones. But that's how you can start to build up what is considered a value range within here. Okay, so use of value and contrast value, the main ideas that I want to get across, there's a couple of them. So we want to create easily recognizable shape breakup within our designs that we have. So shapes can be separated by contrasting values. Our eye is often drawn to brighter parts of an image, especially when that light part is next to a darker part of the image. This contrast oftentimes draws your eye into a particular area. And then, so I wanted to draw your attention also to the Dota 2 workshop character art guide. Again, there's a lot of great information within this guide that helps you to be able to build for their game that they have. But in there, they've got some core art principles that work really, really well. And if you take a look at their value section that they've got a section for value gradient and value patterning. And so I wanted to show you the patterning part, which I think is pretty important. So you can read this for yourself, but the basic idea is that if you have parts separated out by various tones and value, this contrast between like this arm and then this part here makes that just stand out as far as a shape. And I do believe on their game, they're also trying to draw more attention towards the top. So I think if they had a little bit more lighter tones on some of the things, that could draw your eye up towards the top of that as well. So the other big ideas. You can draw the viewer's eye into a particular location. Areas of interest can be built using lighting. So if we take a look at value as not only just shape breakup, but then also how does light fall on an object. Your eye is often drawn to brighter parts of an image. Gradients can be used as a tool for accomplishing this. So again, if we go back to their guide, in their game, it's a 3/4 top-down game, and they really want to draw your attention to the top of the character. So in their case, they're laying a gradient on all the different characters that they've got and making the darker part of the character towards the bottom, and it's always going to be more lit at the top. So again, they're doing this to visually tell you this is where we want you to look. So it is a visual trick at times. It doesn't always work, but I think if you're doing some designs of yours, just keep in mind that it is possible that you can use gradients and you can use lighting to say where do you want the viewer to focus their eye at. And so I put together a little example of this where I found this concept art. This concept art is not mine, but I was able to find and take the line work that they had, and you can do a little bit of shape separation by the value. And then at that point, you're going to put your value and your contrast within the image. And then I added this gradient over the top of it just to emphasize what we were taking a look at in the Dota 2 guide, where we could put a gradient on the character and we can darken parts of the character that we want to de-emphasize a little bit, and then have us look up in this area a little bit more. Okay, so What's the other ideas? A wide variety of rendering styles can be used. Many different types of rendering can be used to establish value and contrast in your image. And so I put these together to show you how that might look. So again, if you're drawing with pencil and you're doing very sketchy lines, you're still able to work with various levels of value and also contrast within your image. So it doesn't have to be pure tones. And if we take a look at this image, you can see this feels very hard edged, and it's basically just swatches of shapes with these different values. But when put together, then it starts to form the shapes that we're looking for within our image. So you might actually look at this and think of something like toon shading, or how something is cell shaded. It's possible too to get rid of these hard edges by taking a blur brush or a smooth brush, and you can lightly blur in through there. Now this example is just using masking and also using a very soft airbrush. So the results of those images are all very similar, and the looks of them varies quite a bit, but the rules for what you're doing with your value and contrast are not really changing. So I've put some other examples. I've found some really nice concept pieces from various artists, and just wanted to show you, like this image. Obviously, it's got the red in there, but beyond that, it's just got really strong areas of contrast where everything is super dark within the shadows within here. But then there's still really nice lighting on here, and it's nice specular highlights within here. So there's a nice sense of lighting falling all over the entire character. And then these portraits that were done obviously in the computer, if you squint your eye, it does have a very photographic look to it. So you can see there's a various usage of airbrush, which gives you this really nice soft transition and turns and forms. And then sometimes you've got more hard edge strokes within there. And you can see definitely the brush strokes in the hair on here for this one. And then in this style, there's so many different hard edge tones put together really close. If you do this, what you call the squint test, if you squint your eyes at something, you can knock away some of the detail, and you can see how it all just blends together and starts to produce something that feels very realistic for the shading on there. These are some other portraits that were done off of sculptural busts, but you can see how this artist, if you get in very close, you can see the individual brush strokes that were done on here. And you can see along here how maybe tone is built up, and then you can see how the different uses of value going across here is used. So I thought this was pretty interesting because the bottom part is unfinished part, or just left, where maybe you can see a little bit of the process, but this refinement in these areas really show you how realistic you can end up getting with some of the look of this, just basically by following the lighting patterns alone, and then using various values within there and having areas of contrast too. So things that help things stick out on here is maybe you could consider this like a rim pass on some of these, and then we've got a really bright next to a really dark, so those really stand out. So again, if you squint your eyes at this image, it's pretty amazing how all the detail just melts away, and it has a very realistic shading and look to it. And see, these are some other concept artists that I found, and it's a lot different look and pushed into the background a bit more. Still has a very nice photographic look. And then this is the artist named Alex Ross, and he's an amazing comic book illustrator. But part of his process is he goes out and he sets up his own lighting, photographs his subjects, and then really uses that reference to really drive his decisions. But I've always been a big fan of how he does this very extreme top-down lighting on things. I've always been a big fan of that. So also, using value as depth in a scene. Value can be used as a method to convey depth in a scene. A scene could be backlit or front lit. Both methods will work to establish depth in a scene. And this is an example that I just put together of something that's front lit, and this is going to say if we've got a foreground, you got a midground, and you got a background, that we're going to use different values for those different separations. So our foreground is lighter, midground is getting a little bit darker, and background keeps getting darker. So it gives the illusion of a light source being up here in the front and everything moving back. So you could say maybe the sunlight is back behind the camera and it's getting dark right now. And so as the light travels through the atmosphere, it just gets darker and darker as it goes towards the back. And you could do the opposite as well. So if your light source is somewhere in the back and then it's maybe the sun is going down, this is what causes silhouettes, and we've already taken a look at that. But using that, you can know that where you've got a lighter background and the midground gets a little bit darker, and it keeps getting darker as it gets towards the foreground. So you can use that as a way to illustrate and set up depth within your scene. And these are some other examples that I found of various concept art, and I thought these were really nice examples of environment spaces that are using value and contrast, and they're using those to set up depth within their scene. And none of the images are very super descript. There's a lot of more loose shapes in there, but again, if you squint your eyes at these images, oftentimes they produce an effect that you can really understand the space, and you can understand what the artist is trying to put together for those.